powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that piece of you with the rest of our community. I had the privilege of going to Ta-Nehisi Coates speak at the high school on Sunday, and I thought it was a really incredible experience. And one idea that he shared was this idea of voting being civic hygiene, that it is the base level of civic participation. And when I read our resolution, to me, this feels like a fantastic foundation for what we want as a district, but it also feels like civic hygiene. We are saying that we will support our policies, we're saying that we will support our strategic plan, and those are all wonderful things. My hope was for today for us to discuss what are ways that we can actively show our community that we support you. What are things that other districts have done that are more action-oriented, that create a culture of inclusion and belonging. So I have some ideas, and certainly would love to hear other ideas on what has been done in other excellent districts around Ohio. And so I'd love to discuss them. I have 6 items on my list, but certainly happy to hear anything else that you guys have. Should I start with? Okay. So one of the things that many other districts have done is to look at their policies and to consider adopting additional policies that support students. And so we could certainly consider asking our Human Resources and Policy Committee to bring forth a policy to us, and we can set a deadline for that. Some example policies would be Bexley has a policy on gender identity and expression that defines what these different roles are, what defines the words, and also defines the way that they can be used in the school spaces. There is also an equity policy, which we could consider. Bexley and Worthington both have equity policies. I know there's a first draft of an equity policy that I sent y'all last year in March, so that would be a starting place. So an equity policy would be another thing for us to consider. We could also consider policies that talk about partnerships that we go into. So when we rent spaces from facilities that are not inside of our district, or when we partner with other organizations, that we have a preference for organizations that will at the very least agree to our non-discrimination policy. So that's one idea. And do you want to discuss them each individually, or you want me to share all 6 ideas at once? I'm happy to do either. Yeah, sure. So some of the other things are a little more action-oriented and less policy-oriented. Stonewall Columbus has the Pride March annually in June. There are school districts that march in that parade. Gahanna, Columbus City Schools are 2 that I know of. I think there are a couple others. So certainly participating in that parade with a very public support for that community is one way to be more action-oriented. Another would be to look at some kind of initiative that is a partnership between us and the city. So for example, Bexley has something called the One Bexley Project. Olentangy has their One Community work. And there's a few different things that are happening in different districts that are partnerships that show support for marginalized individuals throughout the entire community. Another item that we can consider is the way that our district participates in legislation is through lobbying through our organization, which is the Ohio School Boards Association. And I believe we all just got the email a couple of days ago saying that they are now open to accepting any proposals to modify their legislative platform. And so the way that the legislative platform is modified, the process is individual boards like ours would pass a resolution saying we want you to consider a different legislative platform that you will lobby on. We pass a resolution here. That resolution is given to Ohio School Boards Association. Their legislative committee reviews that, and then it goes forward to all of the delegates at the state conference in November. So that process is open now, and we can submit those resolutions anytime through May. So that's another thing we can consider. Gahanna and Bexley both had resolutions last year that they submitted to support trans students. So there are templates that we could use if we wanted to go that route. Another thing that we can consider doing is in April, there is the Day of Silence, which is a day that recognizes the silence that is imposed upon people who cannot share who they are, their authentic selves. And traditionally, Day of Silence ends with a Break the Silence rally. And so either partnering with GLSEN, or if that's too political, talking to other school districts and having some kind of a joint Break the Silence rally would be an option for us to consider. And finally, the last thing is, and this might even fall into just civic hygiene again, but in June of 2020, we passed a resolution, an anti-racism resolution, and that resolution had some language in it that was much stronger than the current resolution that we are considering. Some of the language in that policy was, whereas it is incumbent upon us to fight to end racism and expose and address bias in our society. We also said, whereas we are committed to helping to find solutions that eliminate racism, social injustice, bias, and bigotry. And we also said, be it therefore resolved that we affirm our commitment to diversifying our teaching and administrative staff. All three of those things, the first one, replacing end racism with just marginalization. All three of those whereas and therefore statements certainly fit in this scenario. And I think they are a bit more strongly worded in terms of action, because we talk about diversifying the workforce and the commitment to finding solutions and exposing and addressing bias. So I think those are also things that we can consider adding to our current resolution, just to have a little more action in this resolution itself.